lovely people, welcome back to another Story Study Saturday. I'm Sammi, and I'm a writer who likes to learn about writing through reading and share what I learn with you. So this week I'm going to talk about two books, actually, because they kind of go hand in hand, and I didn't think it was necessary to split them up. And I also read them within 2 days of each other, so I figured maybe it would be best if I just plowed through and didn't give out any spoilers. If you continue on to enjoy this video, it would really help me out if you would hit that like button down below. It'll tell YouTube that more people may like this and more people may also learn from it. Let's talk about Fable and Namesake. I am so happy that I enjoyed these books because I always read the Kindle version first. As of right now, I do not have space for physical books. So I have my Kindle and it is my trusty pal. I chose a pair of pants specifically because they would fit my Kindle into multiple different pockets. That is how committed I am to this device right now. I want to know what books are going to be worth it to me to purchase in physical form when I have bookshelf space in my more adult home sometime in the future. I want to make sure that the books that I'm going to put on my future bookshelf are there because they are worth it inside and not just on the cover. Because I mean, these covers are literally the coolest thing ever. Like, I'm just, they're gorgeous. I see them on people's shelves, on their bookstagrams, and I'm like, man, I want that. I had no idea anything about it besides, of course, that the books make a face on your bookshelf when you put them next to each other. So obviously I wanted it. I wanted to read it because that's too cool to not do it. And I'm so happy that the quality inside of the book matched what my very high expectations were based on the cover of the book. Let's get into my thoughts then. I'm a big fan of how the author managed their descriptions. It is really, really well done. I don't know if you haven't seen my video on show versus tell and how that affects your pacing. Check that out because that is directly what I'm referencing here. This is an amazing example of what I'm talking about in there and how to balance between what makes your story move at the right pace when you're showing and whether it's the right time to choose to tell something to your readers, because this is an amazing example of exactly what I'm talking about in that video. It is covering all of the different ways that showing and telling and how the intensity of the scene makes a big difference. So in this, you have Fable, who's a girl who grew up on a trader's ship, and she's got all of this knowledge. She's a very great diver, and she's able to hear the gems in the water and interact with it that way. So her experience on boats that she's on in the water, these kind of moments, if there's a high intensity situation, she isn't looking around the same way. There's not as much detail of what's going on. We're not being shown as much, so much as we are being told that there are actions happening and how they are happening and so on. But when there's not necessarily a high intensity moment, there is this ability to breathe in the space. And it's actually kind of funny to say that because she's usually underwater, but that's besides the point. It's just an amazing balance between showing and telling and knowing how to navigate that. There are also a lot of very, very distinct side characters. It is incredibly done. They are all so uniquely different. There are a couple that are less developed than some of the more regularly interacted with. However, the ones that you are more regularly interacting with are so uniquely developed that when it's not them, you know, and you can sort of like rule of exclusion and know, oh, it's not them because it doesn't sound like them, so it must be this one because you're on a boat and there's no one else around. And there is this importance of family in the story that is just so powerful. There are so many different ways that family interacts with this story that you get to go through every possible navigation of family in this. You've got losing your family through death or location, losing your family, finding your family, choosing a new family, mending your family, and protecting your family. All of these things are explored, and the value of having that community and those friends and those things just to get you well acquainted with the value and the importance of these people in a world where having value on the people around you is something that is seen as a weakness. It's a really great juxtaposition there where they show that that's something they actively point out that that's something that you shouldn't have in this world, is you shouldn't care about the people around you. You shouldn't have people you care about, because people who don't like you will go after the people that you care about. There's also this beauty of a short span of time, high intensity story. So you've got 2 books, right? And they go over such a short length of time, each of them. So the first book I think goes over like 2.5 to 3 weeks. And then the second book goes over about a month. And then there's like an epilogue. So this whole story goes over like 3 months. Max. And there's just so much that's just going. And that's one of the reasons I think it's so hard to put down. I could not put it down because it's literally like, we just got here. We're going to the next place. There are things that are happening everywhere we look. And it's so much that is interesting, high intensity, and fast in terms of the storyline, which I think makes a really, really great way of building tension. There are definitely some things that I think could be improved in this particular storyline, because no story is going to be perfect. While it does have some really great examples of things that are very, very close to perfect, these are some of the things that I think could be improved personally. There is a love story in this duology that I do not believe. I really want to believe it. I do, but there's something that is missing to it. It feels like an insta-love because of the short span of time that we spend with the characters in the story. So because the actual amount of time that we spend getting to know these characters and seeing the characters interact with each other is less than 3 months, the love story feels a bit intense considering we don't know anything that happened before besides like hearsay. Oh yeah, we did that, we did this, it's been 2 years. We know in concept that it's been a while, but it's a weird to think that we didn't see it happen. Or at least it's weird for me to think that we didn't see it happen. It may not be that way for other people. There may be other readers who are not used to the buildup, who are fine with it. But I do believe a love story a lot more if I see it happen, at least from one person's perspective. And I will admit that there were times that I didn't believe Fable, because Fable was very likable. A lot of people enjoyed being around Fable. So I had no doubt that the love interest was interested in her. But I did have a little bit of doubts that she had genuine interest, because it just sort of felt forced a lot of the time. So it was something that I often was like, does she really like him, or does she just like being liked? I don't know if that's something that is just me. If you had a similar experience reading Fable or Namesake, because it happened a little bit in both, leave a comment down below. I would love to hear what your thoughts are about it. If you thought the love story was good, let me know, because I feel very wishy-washy on it. Like sometimes I'm like, oh, it's cute. And other times I'm like, I don't know. You know, it's just one of those that has that kind of like impact on me for some reason. And also, I've touched on it a little bit. Another thing I think could be improved was that everybody seemed to like Fable. Like Fable had a lot of people who liked her. And while sure, there were some people who were like very anti her happiness and like didn't really like her at all and would want to kill her, but they also had a certain level of respect for her. I mean, I get that Fable's the main character. She's literally the name of the book. I get it. She should be having her main character moments. It felt disingenuous. Like I didn't believe it, because it's just so much. Like I wanted somebody to be more indifferent to her. So what do I think we can learn from this story? Let me tell you. Oh man. So this is a great example of how to span a high intensity story over a short period of time. It is great for that. And it is both stories. They're different short lengths of time, but you get to see how that kind of intensity is built up, how to keep the momentum going, and how to fill out a whole novel and fill in a whole story over a short period of time. Because a lot of things can happen in a short period of time if you know how to navigate telling that story. And this is a really great example of telling a short period of time story over a regular sized novel. It's also a great example for an ensemble of characters. They are so well done. I am very impressed by them, to the point that I instantly compared them in my head to the supporting cast of Mistborn because I couldn't keep track of them on the page at all. And this one I didn't even need like labels. I got their voices really grasped on, and there's about the same amount of people in Mistborn as there are in Fable. So keeping up with them was a lot easier and a lot more distinguished. And it's a very good example of how to contrast your characters when they are so closely knit together and have a lot of things that bounce off of each other, how to really separate them from each other and make sure that they're all well-developed and individuals. It's also a good example of how to highlight a character that will come back later. So I don't necessarily want to give you any spoilers, so I'm not going to say who it was or what the situation was, but there is a character that we encounter towards the beginning of Fable that comes back in Namesake and has sort of a redemption. And that character has enough plot seeds hinted at that he's important in the beginning that makes it an interesting, predictable, like you're not upset that that character comes back, and you see that development and you get to watch that character arc develop, and it's really quite sweet. And it's a great example of how to put in little drops of importance into a character that has less importance that you know will come back to have more importance later on. I will say that I had way more fun reading this than I thought I would. You know me by now. I don't know what this book's about most of the time. I usually know what the cover is. This one I definitely only knew what the cover was. And even then I didn't even read the cover because the cover has like trader, sailor, and like other things on it that say factors about like what the story is, what we know about Fable later on. And I just dove in literally with like, oh yeah, there's the title. I got it on my Kindle. So I didn't even recognize that the cover had that information on it until I was almost done reading, because my Kindle lock screen goes to the cover now that I learned how to do that. It's really great. I'm a big fan of it. So it's definitely a really great story, even if you don't know what you're getting into. But if you do, it's gotta be more fun. I haven't read like a boat story since I was so young. Like I remember the last story that took place on a boat, I was a kid, and it was like a middle grade book. I couldn't tell you what it was called or what it was about besides that they were on a boat, but it was really refreshing. There's a lot of moving parts when you're on a boat and like navigating that kind of stuff, that kind of war zones of like being a trader and like that kind of stuff. And it's just a really good, fun book. Even if you're not reading it for the sake of learning something, it's fun. It's a fun book. I gave it 5 stars. I gave both Fable and Namesake 5 stars, so that's saying something. They were both a blast to read, and they were great examples of certain techniques, and I really enjoyed it. And the conflict that is presented in both of them are uniquely different, and getting those uniquely different, similar circumstance, short time frame conflicts are so interesting. Like, I'm just very impressed with the story. It's worth a read. It's a quick read. It's very, very quick to get through because of that time frame, and I highly recommend it if you are looking for a fun swimming-based story. That is probably all I have for you today about Fable and Namesake. I highly recommend it. It's not just beautiful on a shelf. It is beautiful in your brain too. And let me know in the comments what you thought about it if you have read it already. What are your thoughts on the love story? What are your thoughts on the showing versus telling? Have you ever thought about it that way before? Let me know. Let's have a talk. If you enjoyed this video, leave a like down below. I'll be back on Tuesday for a Writing Tip Tuesday, and again on Saturday for another Story Study Saturday. If you don't want to miss any of those coming uploads, hit that subscribe button and the notification bell right next to it, and I will show up in your notifications bar on the next upload. Thanks for making it all the way to the end of the video. I hope you are having a fantastic new year, and this is going to be the one. I will see you next time.